Well, Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Oh, first rapid fire back in the snowy north of Indiana. Let's go.
Do it. All right, here we go. Fill in the blank. We've been talking about expectations, whether or not they were met for Notre Dame last year. So your first expectation for Notre Dame next season is blank.
Simple. Make the playoff. That's the lowest expectation I can have with the positive vibes that I'm feeling going into the offseason and then into the actual season. Now, I could change my tune, I'm sure, after we watch spring ball or maybe after we watch fall practice or whatever. But I feel like I'm setting the bar kind of low, to be perfectly honest with you, with make the playoffs. I kind of wanted to say host a playoff game. I kind of wanted to go that route. But if they make the playoff, I'm good for next year. I really am. I'd be a little bit disappointed, but I do want a home playoff game. I honestly do.
Yeah, that's completely where I am as well. College football playoffs. Last year's expectation for me, anyway, was New Year's Six Bowl.
Absolutely.
That's gone now. There are no more, what we're going to call New Year's Six Bowl because it's going to be you're in the playoff field. It's a 12-team format, and that's essentially sucking up.
That is what the New Year's Six was, right?
So exactly. Exactly. So my minimal expectation, to your point, be in the playoff. Next expectation, host a first-round playoff game. Next is win that game, which would be the equivalent of winning one of those major bowl games, which they haven't done in 30 years. So that's kind of my set right there.
I completely agree with that, and I think I really, really want them to win that. If they're hosting that first round game, there is no reason that they should lose that game. I'm sorry. There is no excuse for losing that game. None.
But upsets happen.
I get it. I understand.
I mean, there's no excuse for what happened in Arlington, over the weekend. But
I wasn't going to bring it up.
Death. We beat that to death yesterday, so we don't have to go down that road. It was a good, it turned out to be good that Jesse was on, so we could get it out of our system and move on.
That's a good call. Just remember, I was in Dallas yesterday.
That's right.
And there was a couple Packer fans that were sitting right behind me on the plane.
Oh boy,
back to Midway. Just FYI, they were very nice, but they were right behind us.
Yeah,
so
I'm sure they were.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was starting to put Sloppy Joe's comment up. He says, have a Viper. This is his expectation. Have a Viper who has the ability to put pressure on the quarterback. So fill in the blank, Vince. Jordan Botelho's 2023 season was blank.
A massive disappointment. It was a massive disappointment. Now, I didn't have huge expectations for him in the first place. I'll be honest with you. He hasn't proven to me to be the guy that Notre Dame thinks he is at this point.
And that's the thing.
Yeah. I've just heard too many stories that give me pause. How about that? And he has yet to make me forget about those stories. So from a Notre Dame perspective, it was a huge disappointment was 2023. I don't want to say it's what I anticipated because I didn't anticipate it was going to be this bad. So it was still a disappointment for me as well.
Yeah, I think it was solid, yet not spectacular. Like you didn't see Jordan Botelho make, like a bunch of bonehead plays and you're like, what the heck is Jordan Botelho doing out there? We've had the conversation with some other guys, but he did ultimately underachieve based on the expectations that pretty much everyone, including himself, had for him coming into this year. And I think of everyone on the defense, Botelho would be kind of at the bottom of the ladder in terms of who did and who didn't meet or exceed their expectations for the season. And that includes Maris Leofau, because even though Leofau didn't play, to the top level of maybe, what everyone would have wanted for him this year, I do still think he was better than, the 2022 version of Maris Leofau. And
it's true.
Look at where he ended up,
craziness.
Still, yeah. I mean, still could have been better, like with run diagnosis and run fits and all that kind of stuff, but did it, at least exceed basic expectations in some other areas. But like you look at Botelho, he had 4 sacks, 3 hurries this year. He did better than that as a backup to Isaiah Foskey the year before, So I think the expectations, have been on Botelho for a long time, and that's ultimately, this year what Al Washington and Al Golden have got to be able to get out of him, bring out of him.
Yes.
This year, you've got to. There's a whole nother level. I think we all know it for Botelho to go to, and that's what they've all got to figure out.
If he can reach the potential that Notre Dame thinks that he has, that will be a huge shot in the arm for this defense. It just will be. It'll be one of the things that we'll be talking about this time next year. It's like, wow,
Right.
Botelho just came out of nowhere, frankly. And he gave us a taste of it, obviously, in the bowl game, but it needs to stretch over 13, 14 games.
It is like Isaiah Foskey got there ultimately a little bit sooner, but like Foskey was a little bit of the same boat. We were waiting for a little bit longer than we thought we were going to before he finally got there. But once he did, I mean, we saw what he could be.
Sure.
So, all right, Vince, there is talk that Nick Saban is heading to College Game Day next season. Scale of 1 to 10, how much does that move the needle for you?
Maybe a 2. I guess because how do I say this? He doesn't have much of a personality. At least not that I've seen, right? Like, I feel like they have sufficiently replaced Corso with McAfee. Like, I feel, he's like the new Corso. Okay. Mm-hmm. Just a younger version, outspoken, has some crazy takes, whatever, right? I just don't think Nick Saban has the personality needed. Like, at least Urban Meyer has a personality, and like on the Fox game pregame show, right? Like Nick Saban, unless there's something that I'm missing.
Like, did you expect Urban Meyer to have a personality before that? Like his.
Yes, more so than
this whole show's been about expectations. Like, has he exceeded your expectations along those lines? To me, I think he has a little bit.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, you've seen videos of him in the club and stuff like that. He's obviously got the personality.
Well,
I mean,
again, like,
just saying. So I mean, he's kind of met my expectations on that show. If Nick Saban has an ounce of personality, he will surpass my expectations.
I mean, you see it, I think, every once in a while, like when you see clips when they'll post, like social media from his coach's show or like a press conference where he kind of lights up, a little, like he goes off on some tangent on whatever it happens to be. Personally, I think that someone of his stature is kind of what Game Day has been lacking, as Corso has gotten old. Corso, I think, is like 88 or something like that right now. And from what I heard, it sounds like he's still going to be around, but he's probably just going to do like the last segment, where he puts on the, the mascot head or whatever. But, Saban, McAfee is his own deal, whatever you think about Pat McAfee. And, it is interesting that Saban was a weekly regular guest on the McAfee show this year.
I didn't realize that.
I'm sure they were paying him quite a bit of money to do that appearance, but those two guys, as a result, they've kind of got a little relationship. So I think there's going to be some chemistry there. And he obviously knows all the other guys. I feel like Game Day has been lacking that, that kind of figure with some gravitas and
sure, like
the answer to Urban Meyer, basically.
Yeah.
So
I can see that.
I'm guessing that, he's a little bit like Belichick, where like Belichick was playing a game for a long time at his press conferences in terms of, I'm just going to stand here and I'm going to be dry and vanilla and I'm not going to give you anything. And I'm sure Saban was a little bit the same way. So just how much of that we get, I don't know, but I do feel like Game Day needed that kind of presence. And I mean, you can't go wrong with the guy who is the greatest college football coach of all time, arguably. So.
Even SEC Shorts did like a serious thing with him at the end of their most recent little clip that they put out, where they were giving grades to all the SEC teams. They like took his hat and like hung it in the corner and like turned the lights off, like, but if I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna get some flack and I don't care. If Game Day wants to move the needle, they need to retire Lee Corso.
Oh man,
they need it's getting to the point where it's almost like Weekend at Bernie's. Like, it's time It's time to just hang it up. And it's okay. It's okay that it's time. It's okay. Right. I'm sorry. It's okay.
And I think that that's why if they go the direction that I was just talking about, where they just kind of,
Right.
bring him in to have some fun, put on the headgear, like the mascot head at the end of the show. I think that that's kind of like, it's obviously pointing toward it's coming. His time
Yeah.
on that show is getting closer
Yeah.
to an end. But yeah, I think that especially when you're adding a guy like Saban, who is going to be part of the regular panel, I think there's only so much room because those shows, there's only you only get so much time to kind of say your point on each topic anyway. It's not like a podcast where we can
Right.
sit here and expand as much as we want, whatever
Right.
else, because
Exactly.
you've got 5-6 guys out there, and I don't think it makes sense to kind of keep Corso and pull it, yank my cord. I don't think it makes sense to kind of keep Corso in that mix, especially if you are adding another guy out there.
I mean, I still love the head thing and all of that, like the mascot. Like it's a great shtick. I get it. It's just, you see some of the behind the scenes stuff, and it's just like, man, they just need to let this guy just sit in front of his TV and watch some games. Like, just let the man go.
Yeah. I agree with DK though. I think Corso takes you in a bare knuckles fight when it's all said and done.
Does he get to wear one of those massive mascot heads so I can't get to him?
It'd be like Bob Barker on Happy Gilmore.
The price is wrong.
What do you think now?
The price is wrong.
That's right. Fill in the blank, Vince. After Caleb Williams said that he wouldn't declare for the NFL draft until he was assured the Bears wouldn't pick him at number 1 overall, Williams has in fact declared for the draft. He did it yesterday, which was the last day to do it. I saved this for you, by the way. Could have brought this up yesterday with Jesse, but you're the Bears fan, so I saved it for you.
Yeah, listen. It just allows me to hate him forever, which is the best part of the whole situation.
Please, Bears draft him, please.
I don't like this man, and I have been told by people that he's a good kid and he's all these. I don't like him. I don't like him at all. Like, not even a little bit. I don't like him. And somebody said if they trade Justin Fields to like the Falcons or something, or I forget who they said, but like they would have 3 top 10 draft picks and all of this stuff. And it's like, you get way more draft capital if you get out of that number 1 slot. I hate to say it, you really would. And the Bears are not one position away from being a Super Bowl team. Okay. They've got holes across the roster. They need to build up the entire roster. They can win with Justin Fields. I do believe that they can win with him. I think he got marketably better from year 2 to year 3. How about he gets an offensive coordinator for more than 1 year at a time? Like, that would be nice. Like, maybe set him up for some success. But as far as Caleb Williams is concerned, the fact that he's dictating who drafts him and all of these different things, like, we haven't seen this since Eli, right? Like, that's the last time that this kind of all went down.
I was going to say, he's not the first guy to do this.
I know he's not.
It's not like Eli Manning and Elway are the two.
Yeah, those are the 2 big
most prominent guys. And
now,
it worked out for both of them.
Those 2 ended up being in the Hall of Fame, too.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I am not a fan. I hope whatever team drafts him is a friggin' dumpster fire team, and then he ends up right in the middle of the flames. That's what I hope.
I think it's just going to make this whole draft season that much more juicy. The fact that you've got this and what kind of leverage it potentially gives the Bears to trade that pick. You got the Patriots sitting there. You got Washington sitting there. All these teams sitting behind them. Like, would Carolina jump in and decide that they want to go after a quarterback for a second straight year after trading the Bears this pick to begin with?
Right,
it's
exactly.
Like, that's why the Bears are in the position that they're in right now, is because Carolina wanted to trade up and take Bryce Young.
They've got 2 top 10 picks now.
Teams will do crazy, stupid things to get their quarterback, and that someone's going to be willing to make that deal. I think the Bears are ultimately going to trade out of that spot because, they've got another pick there in the top 10. How much, like you just keep making this move, like like you trade and then you get another high first round pick next year out of the deal from somebody else, because like you said, there's a lot of roster building that has to be done. But the other side of that is you got to make good picks, like
absolutely 100%.
Got to make good picks with it. And that's where
100%.
Ryan Poles, I think, is really going to be tested.
There's only one guy in college football that I want on the Bears roster, and he wore number 76 for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
They could get him. I think they've got a chance to get him.
I think they do too.
At number 9 already. Yeah,
I think they do too. I really do. That would make me, like, the draft would be a success for me if they bring in Joe Alt at left tackle. I mean, that would be, because that's one of the places that they need absolute help is on the offensive line.
They've got to get at least one stud receiver and one stud offensive lineman out of those 2 picks. And
they could.
And I think that there's a chance, and they might even be able to get another wide receiver out of this deal. Because, like, I've heard, all these different scenarios, like you trade down and you trade down again. And, I think that there's a possibility that they could get a lot of. Yeah.
Depending on who wants that number 1 pick, right? They could end up in the middle of the top 10, right? Like 5 or 6, something like that, whatever the draft order is. And you could get a top flight wide receiver and Joe Alt, man. Like, that would be, let's go. Like, I would be excited about that.
Yep. DT, man, he's rubbing it right in. Caleb Williams in Chicago feels right.
Oh, no, it doesn't. Isn't Detroit Hunter a Chicago guy? How can you say that feels right? Come on, man. He is a West Coast guy. So I want him to end up in, like, Washington. I think that would be, he has no prayer of being successful in Washington. Like, send him to the Commanders or the team.
Honestly, he feels like a Raider to me.
Oh, that's a good call.
Like, they would have to do a lot of wheeling and dealing. I think. Yeah. I don't know that they're willing to trade up that high.
TK says the Bears draft McCarthy in the first round.
That would be.
Oh,
that would be awesome,
would be bad.
Actually.
That would not be. Wherever Jim Harbaugh ends up is who's going to take McCarthy. And if anybody thinks Jim Harbaugh is coming back to Michigan, JJ McCarthy declared for the draft. If Jim Harbaugh was coming back to Michigan, so would JJ McCarthy. Jim is gone.
I think he's, especially after winning that championship, I think the NFL is going to come hard after him this time. And there are a lot more teams with openings. He's already interviewed with the Chargers. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens, because I've been reading some stuff about, he's still negotiating, with Michigan and that kind of stuff. And one of the things that he wants in the contract is a guarantee that he won't be fired if the NCAA drops the hammer,
which is hilarious.
I know.
Mean, how can tell me you're guilty without telling me you're guilty? Like, what?
Yeah.
Gosh. It's hilarious to me.
All right, so speaking of NFL head coaches, Nick Sirianni has led the Eagles to 3 straight playoff appearances in his first 3 years, including last year's Super Bowl. Yet there are calls for his job after going from potentially being the number 1 seed. They were in position to be the number 1 seed in the NFC in early January. They plummeted all the way to a wild card loss on the road to Tampa Bay last night. Do you buy or sell the Eagles moving on from Sirianni, Vince?
Is this not, can we not just have this conversation and just replace Sirianni with Ryan Day? I feel like it's a very similar conversation, to be honest with you. Sustained success, and yet the fan base probably wants him out.
Yeah.
And the answer to me, looking at it from a 30,000-foot view, is no. You don't get rid of somebody that's having that kind of success. You don't. And if you do, who are you getting? Who is going to do a better job?
Belichick is on the market. There's already. Belichick is on the market. Harbaugh is on the market. Yeah. It's not like Mike Vrabel is on the market. You literally, who's available?
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
There's a who's who. Pete Carroll is on the market. There's a who's who of coaches who they could potentially go out and get right now.
This is true. Now, I think 3 of them all have their AARP card. So I don't know how
True too.
sustainable that would be.
Yeah.
But your point is well taken. Your point is well taken. There are options out there, but no, I would not get rid of either one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good analogy. Sirianni today and expectations and everything. I think the difference is Ryan Day, didn't just crumble down like for an entire month and a
Right.
half like
Yeah,
Sirianni
that's
did. I
true.
mean, they were 14-3 and in the Super Bowl last year. They started off 11-1 and lost 5 of their last 6 regular season games and then lose a playoff game to boot. So they went from 10-1 to what 11-7 by the time it was all said and done, which is
Terrible.
just
It's terrible.
crazy. And there's he lost both of his coordinators, one of them being Steichen, who got Indianapolis to within a
Yeah.
game of being in the playoffs this year. And the other one, Jonathan Gannon, goes out to Arizona. It just sounds like there's a lot of crazy inner turmoil that goes beyond, playoff appearances and all that kind of, like just how, like has he lost the locker room type stuff? Because the
Right.
guy is like, I've never been a fan of just his antics and his, there's a lot of external cockiness that you generally don't see from a head coach, maybe unless it's Ryan Day. I don't know. Again, it's like it is a good analogy to compare them. But how much difference did those coordinators make? Because like if
Sure.
you're the head coach, what did you fix over the course of the season once things started breaking down? And there was a lot of things that ended up breaking down for him as the season went on. So it's all dysfunctional talk right now. I want whatever is bad for for the Eagles. So if he's the problem, keep him, Philly. Like I'm perfectly fine if he's the problem. If he's not, whatever, move on, whatever you have to do. Never, completely cared for. But you're right. It's like when you just look at 3 straight playoffs, you were, in a Super Bowl. Like it, when I started hearing this stuff, like they might move on, it's crazy. But then you start hearing all this other stuff that comes with it. And I don't know, like it was crazy last night. I don't know. I guess you were, I don't know how much you were able to kind of see from where you were, but like, there was like receivers and tight ends yelling at Jalen Hurts and just all this
Oh yeah,
crazy
it was a
stuff going
mess.
on. So
And they're
it's
losing.
just nuts how quickly it's falling apart out
Yeah.
there.
It sounds like the Eagles are also going to be losing a bunch of veterans potentially too
Yeah.
to retirement
Sounds
or
like
whatever.
Jason Kelsey is
He
going to
yeah,
retire.
he's retiring. And they went down the list of guys that have kind of been there for a really long time and
Mm-hmm.
might be, leaving. And that could, that could make a difference too, because those veterans are what kind of set the tone in the locker room. And if you lose those guys, what's that going to look like, et cetera. So those are all things that ownership obviously has to take into account. Do you want to start from scratch? You want to start completely over? That's going to be tough to do.
Yeah. I think Michael Hahn agrees with my philosophy. Whatever's bad for the Eagles, he's
It's
a
fair.
Giants fan, he'll
It's
take.
fair.
Yeah, apparently Kelsey told the team he's going to
Yeah.
retire. Hasn't announced it officially, but it's
Well,
looking like, because he was on the fence, I think, after
last
last
year.
year. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a really good documentary on Jason Kelsey. I think it's on
I
Amazon.
haven't seen that yet, but
It's good.
yeah, I've
I
seen
enjoyed it.
yeah.
I
Did you?
thought it was going to be on both brothers, but it's just on him.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
and because it was before the whole Taylor Swift thing,
Ah,
you know what I mean. So it pretty
yeah.
much covers all of last season, and it kind of takes you on the ride of his wife being pregnant and the whole thing. Long story short, I thought it was a nice peek into his life, and I thought it was really good. He really struggled with the decision to retire or not in last year's offseason, and he didn't even let the team know until the day before free agency started.
Oh, wow.
So I think this time around, he kind of knew that if he came back, it was going to be for a year. Like he's,
That's someone who, I mean, they already have their own podcast and all that stuff, but that's someone,
yeah.
I think with his personally, I think he would be better than Gronk on TV.
I think it'd be fantastic. I think it'd
Yeah.
be fantastic. And he has enough off the field, not cliche, whatever the word I'm looking for there, cachet.
Cachet. Yeah.
Cachet, not cliche, cachet. He's got enough off the field because he's got.
Don't start throwing archetypes around like Tony Romo was doing in the early
that was
game
terrible.
yesterday.
That was awful, by the way. Like he got that completely wrong.
I know.
Anyway, he's got he sang on that Christmas album. He's got the podcast. Like he's got off the field stuff that he can do, and it was hilarious. There's one part, Sean, and you'll appreciate this. He does the podcast from his house, and there's a point where he's doing the podcast, and his wife is trying to keep the kids quiet, so that they can't hear them on the podcast. It's like, Daddy's working. You got to be quiet. I could just see my wife doing the same thing, with my kids.
All your kids running around outside, total chaos outside that door where the green walls are. Yeah.
Yes, it was hilarious to me. I was like, I know how that goes. So yeah, it was. I think when he made that decision, it was for 1 year. You know what I mean? And regardless of the way things ended this year, I think he was going to be done.
Yeah. So the USFL and the XFL have merged into a league that's going to be called the United Football League, or the UFL. So there's no more USFL. There's no more XFL. They're going to be actually divisions in the UFL.
They took 4 teams from one, 4 teams from the other, and those are the divisions. Yeah,
exactly. So my question is, should they have just kept the name from one of these 2 existing leagues rather than created a completely different name for this league?
I love the collaboration, to be honest with you, because I think it's a 50-50 venture from what I can gather. And if it's a 50-50 venture, if you name it one or the other, then it looks like the other one is in control. And I think they wanted to avoid that.
And I think you're probably right. It just seems like, like a little bit of confusion for, because there are so many casual fans of this league to begin with, because it's, a spring league and people know USFL, people know XFL.
Right.
And so now you've got UFL, and it's like,
it's not competing against anything though. So I don't think it matters.
That's
true.
What
I mean?
And they did at least keep the names, there's a USFL division and an XFL division.
So I kind of dig that, actually. I mean, it's a true marriage. Like they both looked at each other and they looked at their models and they're like, okay, this can probably work, but probably not by ourselves. So if we join forces with the TV contracts and with, some of the more successful teams and things within each of their leagues, and we join forces, I think it can be sustainable. And look, no spring league is going to be sustainable super long term unless the NFL gets involved. I just don't think that that's going to be the case. So, but they've got to make a name for themselves, and this is the new iteration. And if they can keep it going for a few years, I think the NFL does get involved, and I think they see the value of kind of a minor league for the NFL. I do.
Yeah. And I mean, you've already seen, like look at Brandon Aubrey as an example. He came out of the the USFL. That's where he got his start, and because as we know, he was a soccer player.
Yes, he was. Not a kicker, by the way.
He turned himself into a professional kicker in the USFL, and there are other guys who have come out of those leagues as well who have made it to the NFL. And so I completely agree. I think that is where this league is really going to, sort of make its foundation, is if they can become a consistent developmental league, more partnership, I think, with the NFL.
Yeah.
I was looking, there were some people tweeting about the archetype comment that Romo made.
He made it sound like it was like a career arc. I think that's what he wanted to say.
Yeah, he said that he said something about the archetype of Mason Rudolph's career.
Yeah, it should have been like career arc, not archetype.
Not archetype.
Completely wrong usage of that word.
Yes.
And he said it twice in the same rant.
Right.
Which it's just
he doubled down on his wrongness of the use of the word.
Yes, he did. 100%. 100%. So, yeah.
Get out your thesaurus. Tony Romo. All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. So,
you want a fun fact?
Yes.
So, as you know, we talked about at the top of the show that I was in Florida for my son's kicking extravaganza,
Yes,
whatever.
and I meant to ask you more about that.
Went very well. It went very well. And like I said, this was a national thing. So they had like their national coaches there working with the kids and whatnot. And guess who my son got to work with one-on-one and do some film breakdown and get out on the field and do the whole thing. Somebody we all know.
I know the answer to this. A little birdie came by and told me.
Oh, really?
Day. So, yes.
What little bird?
Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah.
It was your father-in-law at the basketball game.
Oh, did you guys talk? Okay.
Yeah, I got the report. I got the report of who he was working with, and it sounded like things went better for him from a punting standpoint.
They did
than expected.
They did, yeah. So obviously we didn't say the name. It was Justin Yoon, works for Cole's Kicking, and Justin got it. He got to work with my son, and he really enjoyed it. And like I think Dylan was a little starstruck, which was pretty fun to watch. It doesn't usually happen, and it was cool. It was really, really neat. So for the 2 days, he got to work with Justin Yoon, of all the people that were there to help him and everything. And so it was a really good weekend. It was a lot of fun.
Cool.
And
very cool.
Yeah, it was good. It was a
so
great.
What happens next now? Like, do you know the rankings and all that kind of stuff? What's the next step in this process?
They will take the tape, because everything they did was recorded, like drills, charting, like all this stuff was recorded. So he'll be ranked nationally as a kicker. He's already ranked as a kicker. He's 84th in the country in his class. Okay. And then he has not been ranked as a punter, but he went and he did all the things to get ranked at this camp for punting. He made it to the punt finals that was there, which was awesome. He had a boomer of a punt. It was great. Awesome. And so he'll get a ranking for punting. So he'll be ranked in both. And hopefully the number goes up from 84 for kicking. And hopefully the punt number is a good one as well. But he's a 4.5 star. They only go up to 5, which is awesome. And so now we get to take this little ranking out. There'll be a week or two probably before they update everything. But now we get to take this out. We're going to hit some junior days, and he's made some contact with some coaches. And
very cool.
That's the next step. So
now he is a junior, right?
He is. Yeah, he's a junior right now. Okay. So, and everything, like, you know how we talk recruiting all the time, right? The 25s are getting all the publicity, for every other position. But for kickers, unless you're like the top 5 kicker in the country,
this is kind of where it really gets started for most of these guys.
Like the vast majority of these guys, they could get some offers in the summer. Some of the upper guys. So like if you're ranked as a 4.5 or whatever, you could potentially get an offer in the summer, but a lot of them are going to come during your senior season or just after, like right before signing day and everything. That's kind of where it really kind of hits hard. So the next 12 months or so, 10 months or so should be very, very interesting. Should be fun.
All right.
Should be fun.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Good luck. We're going to have Dylan on it at some point.
I know. I'm thinking, signing day. Well, he can put the hats out front, we'll
that's
do
right.
The whole thing. So
that's right. Very cool.
Hoping for a 5-star ranking when it's all said and done. That's our goal. So
all right.
Like it's me. It's his
Finger
goal.
crossed.
I just drive him places.
Let's be honest. It's Dad's goal too, but
yeah, it is. It is.
All right. Good stuff. Good stuff. I'm glad it went well, and hopefully
it
keeps going even better later on down the road. Very
cool.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks for being here tonight. Hit that like button if you would. And of course, our friendly reminder to subscribe, rate, review, and all that kind of good stuff on your podcast platform. And we will talk to you next time on IB Nation Sports Talk.